And so my other question about Zakat.
Yes, it's
right?
a charity.
Charity.
Right? Okay. So the charity actually, so Islam also has 5 pillars, by the way, right? So which means that, how we talked about prohibitions and recommended things and disliked things and then open things, right? So like that, there are like 5 pillars that are the main essence of Islam, and then there are like details to it. So the 5 main thing is, first of all, believing that there's only one God worthy of worship, and that is the God of all the prophets, all human beings, and that is Allah, and that Quran is His book, and that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the final messenger of God, right? There won't be any other messengers, and that all the others that we know of, Abraham, Noah, Moses, Jesus, peace be upon them all, they were also messengers of God, right? And many others that we have not mentioned but name. They're all different messengers. So we believe in that. So that belief, that acknowledgement in your heart, that's the first pillar of Islam. Then the second pillar is to establish the 5 daily prayers, right? So I should be able to leave my work, my studies, my entertainment, and be able to find time to kind of pray within those intervals. And then the third thing is to fast once a month. And all these things are based on ability, right? If you have the ability. If you can't fast physically, then you don't fast, right? And then the fourth pillar is that the minimum charity, which is 2.5% of excess wealth every year. Okay, I'll talk about it in a second. And then the fifth pillar is basically performing a pilgrimage to Mecca, right? That what you read about with Malcolm X's biography there. So that, and once in a lifetime, right? So these are the 5 pillars, the foundations of Islam, if you will. So in terms of charity, so Zakat is basically every year, right? It's 2.5% basically on your cash, RSPs, TFSAs, in modern times, like stocks or whatever. But what it does not include is your clothes, your own house, the car that you have, even if you may have multiple cars. So stuff that you use, the basic stuff, is not included, but anything beyond that, every year you pay 2.5% on that, right? Just summarizing it. What was I going to say? And it can only be spent on specific causes. Okay, so for example, because it's by the way, it's very low. It's just 2.5%. So.
But for like a community of people contributing 2.5% of their income, that adds up pretty quick.
Exactly.
That's what I find so fascinating about it. It's such a good call.
Right, yeah. And also if you don't have the minimum threshold, right? So the threshold is in grams of gold or silver, right? So let's say if you don't have roughly speaking, let's say $1,000 or $1,500. How much?
It's like 3,000 Canadian.
Yes, if you don't have 3,000 Canadian as an example, then you don't have to, right? So you need to obviously cross a certain threshold when it becomes an obligation. However, many people, it's recommended, and many people do way more than 2.5%, right? So that's the bare minimum, okay? And because you understand that, look, this wealth is not mine. It's like how a father may give a son $100, $1,000, and see how you use it, right? So the more you give for the sake of Allah, you realize it's not mine. Allah gave it to me. The more Allah will give you, that's His promise. He'll give you here as well as the reward in the hereafter. Because that 2.5% that we mentioned, if you really want to follow full orthodox and limited version, it's really limited on who can benefit from that.
Yeah, you can't. It's like you can't take that to heaven with you. So.
Yeah. No, the point being that, for example, there may be some scholars that may differ, but for example, from that 2.5%, for example, this building that we are in, right? There used to be a church. It's probably cost like $8 million, something like that, right? So you can't take that 2.5% from people and buy this mosque, right? Because there's specific expenditures that are allowed. So the $8 million came from non-zakat in general, right? So that was beyond what people gave, beyond that 2.5%, right? Different organization, groups, people, what have you, right? So the point being that the 2.5% is to specific people like poor people, right? People who are actually poor, who doesn't have the basic needs, right? Poor or needy people, people who have a lot of debt, right? So not like credit card debts and whatnot, just people used to buy different luxuries, but actual debts for basic things, medicals, whatever, right? It could also be especially in the past, it could be for travelers, right? Someone who is traveling, they may have money, in their own, back home in their home countries, but now they're traveling, they don't have the money, right? And obviously, you didn't have PayPal and digital currencies back then, so they can utilize that. Even though technically they're rich, they're eligible to be given from that 2.5%, right? And things like that. So it's not for anything and everything. Like a lot of different projects, scholars would discourage using that zakat money on those things, because this should be the focus of to take care of those basic main necessities.
Like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like food,
Yeah,
water,
yeah,
shelter,
exactly.
Kind of covering those.
Yeah,
bases.
right. So not like, okay, I want to build an organization, or I want to publish a book, and I'm going to use. Some scholars allow it, but if you just want to be really safe side, you let's just use this to first eradicate and take care of the basic needs, and then, not just you. And then people would just do extra for other projects.